My name is CPS Andy Kalisa, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's session. We are very excited to welcome you all to this webinar about the International Financial Reporting for Non-Profit Organizations, which we call IFR4NPO project, and how it is relevant for stakeholders in Rwanda. As much as the primary audience is stakeholders in Rwanda, but we all know that we have a couple of registrants from other countries. We welcome you all. And please, I want to have a meeting overview for today, what we are going to be discussing in detail. Chris, can you please take me to the next slide, if you don't mind?
Yes. Knox is in the meeting.
Who is that? Jean Bosco?
No, he's in the meeting. Remember that Rwanda, what was?
Sorry about that. Just unmute yourself for now. We'll just give you time to talk to us when it's the right time. Thank you. The meeting overview, this meeting will introduce the International Financial Reporting Project, and we are going to hear from experts here in Rwanda before opening up for some small discussions and the feedback from you, the participants for today. We will then have to look at how the stakeholders in Rwanda and beyond can get involved and play a part in shaping the future of financial reporting in non-profit organizations so that your needs and perspectives are reflected. Lebo, good to hear from you. Lebo, thank you so much. Yes. All right, the meeting will introduce the IFRN, like I said, so I'll move direct to whom do we have today. My name is CPS Andy Kalisa, and I'm the project country champion. And of course, I dabble as the Director of Professional Development Services at the Institute of Certified Public Accountants of Rwanda, which we call IFR. I'm your host for today. I'm also delighted to be joined by CPA Chris Twagirimana, who is the IFR4NPO, is a technical advisor and also doubles as the quality and involvement manager here at the Institute. We're also delighted to be joined by the project director, who is Samantha Musoke, who is here with us today as well. So I would wish that I welcome all of you, and I can see we have a couple of stakeholders, and I cannot mention each of you by name, but I have to admit that I welcome and recognize your presence, all of you who have managed to join us today. It's great to see so many of you here, Lebo, the likes of Lebo, other stakeholders in Rwanda. Please, you are welcome. We really feel pressurized to have you around. Please just take a moment to introduce yourself by typing in the chat. Please type your name, your organization, and the role that you're playing. Just type in your name, the role, and the organization. Just a few minutes just before we move into the rest of the other details. David, please kindly use the chat. Yes. I can see some. Let me also give it a try. All right, let me move in now to the NPO sector in Rwanda. NPO, I think in Rwanda, we've used it to the word NGO, but I think NGO is one of the main stakeholders of the NPO sector. So when we talk about the NGO, it is like it's encompassing the NPO sector as well. So in Rwanda, we have a couple of them. They are quite many, but I'm just going to be concentrating on only 3 stakeholders. We have the Rwanda Civil Society Platform. This is an umbrella organization created in 2004. It has around 800 members from 14 umbrella organizations. I'm not yet sure if we already have any participants from Rwanda Civil Society Platform, but it will be really important that at least we get a participant from there, because we believe that is one of the main stakeholders that can work with the Institute to drive this initiative forward. So among its other duties, it also aims at analyzing the major challenges faced by the Rwandan population, where they devise means of adopting common position and strategies to address the challenges. So it's really a key stakeholder in regard to this initiative. Then the other stakeholder I can talk about is the Rwanda Governance Board. This is quite an interesting stakeholder because Rwanda Governance Board, they are mandated to promote good governance principles, and they regularly monitor the service delivery and compliance with the principles of good governance in the public, private, and the NPO sector, which we call the NGO sector here in Rwanda. So RGB is an independent body and has powers to take actions against any political organization which fails to comply with the law, including imposing administrative sanctions against defaulting institutions. Now, this one takes me back to the most recent law on anti-money laundering that we have in Rwanda, which requires all stakeholders, especially the supervisory authorities, to have what we call reporting persons, reporting to FIC, reporting to the regulatory authorities. Now, when it comes to money laundering, the NPO sector has been ranked highest. It is among the high risk for money laundering, which means RGB has a very big role to play in regard to identification of beneficial owners of even the legal entities that are being formed under the NGO sector. So working with us would really be paramount to ensure that at least if you had a uniform guidance, this would facilitate at least even those preparers of financial statements to have uniform and adequate information to facilitate in the implementing of such a law. That is just one example to cite how the guidance can facilitate even in implementation of the jurisdictional laws. So the other one, who is the last one, is the Rwanda Revenue Authority. Rwanda Revenue Authority, somebody would ask himself or herself, why do we have Rwanda Revenue Authority under this? In Rwanda, it is a requirement to also file your corporation tax returns to RRI, even if you are an NPO or an NGO for that matter, simply because even NGOs, you engage a couple of consultants who pay withholding tax, whom you retain withholding tax. So the RRI would wish to know, do you really do exactly what you're supposed to do? For example, you also pay as you earn for your staff, for example, just to cite one reason why when you submit those returns would be very important for the Revenue Authority. Again, these are also among the other stakeholder groups that would really be paramount to ensure that we work together to ensure that we adopt this guidance once it becomes available come 2025. So let me now move into, dive into the IFR4NPO project, what it is all about, and I would call upon Chris to take that through. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Sandy. So let's dive into looking at what IFR4NPO is about. IFR4NPO in full is the international financial reporting for non-profit organization. I'm sure many people here, this is not the first time they are hearing about it, but even for those ones hearing about this project for the first time, this is a good time for you to learn about it. As the start, we're going to start with a problem statement that is all around when it comes to financial reporting in non-profit sector. So as you can see on this screen, we'll start with a problem statement. I would like to start on the problems. We are aware that NPO sector has different players and stakeholders, from funders, NPOs, auditors, and regulators in general. So if you look at the funders, the main challenge that they're having is that mostly audited accounts are not useful to them, and somehow they also are not consistent. So you compare an audited accounts from one NPO and another one, and you find that they are different, and it's really a challenge to compare them. And the effect out of that is that the funders get to incur high cost of due diligence. For NPOs themselves, they get to have a challenge of project funding rather than having unrestricted funds. And what that translates into is that NPOs get to have raw reserves, and they also get to have multiple duplicate reporting, because again, each donor, they want a separate report on each project being funded. When it comes to auditors, they're also struggling to have an appropriate framework for reference. We're all aware that the ISAs, or International Standards of Auditing, they are mainly for IFRS reporting, or maybe IPSAS reporting entities. And generally, you find that the NPOs or NGOs in general, they don't have a good fit in there. So what that translates into as an effect is that you have, again, inconsistency and possibility of fraud, of double funding, whereby just one funder is funding one project, but another funder is also coming to fund the same project. When it comes to regulators and society in general, there is a lack of, I would say, information transparency. And what that has as an effect is that there is low trust for domestic philanthropy, and sometimes NPOs and donors, they're also missing out on tax exemption because the information is not, not comparable. It has not yet been understood by the regulators. So as the common theme, of course, there are different root causes of these problems. But what has been identified as a common theme is a lack of international accounting standards for a non-profit organization, basically, which contributes to the inequity in the NPO sector, and that contributes to the inefficiency, inequity, as I said, and income and financial health issues. So I move to the next. Now, the theory of change that is being proposed by the project is to have a wide adoption of internationally applicable accounting standard for NPO that will create an environment where NPOs have more equitable access to income and financial health. And what we are proposing, of course, maybe some will also come in as a project director to explain more about this, but we're proposing to come up with, the project is working to come up with INPAC. INPAC is International Non-Profit Accounting Guidance. Later on in the presentation, you see where we are from the consultation to the exposure doc, but I leave that to the next slide. So this guidance that we're proposing to have and we're working towards having, it will be up to the countries themselves and the regulators when it comes to the adoption. We're aware, like say, for example, in Rwanda, even the accountancy law, or what we also call the IFR that was put in place in 2009. It lists down the financial, the standards that are used in the accountancy, saying that IFRS will be used for private sector, by private sector entities, IPSAS to be used in the government, then ISAS used for the audits and ISBA code of ethics, for professional accountants. So even that, even this one, when it comes to INPAC, of course, Rwanda, I think we are well positioned to adopt this when it comes finally when it's finalized, but even different countries will be making those decisions. Funder endorsement, I think I will explore more about the funder endorsement later in the presentation, but this is also something that is very important. We're all aware that NPOs, there is an international, a non-profit organization, they work with local, and even this international, they kind of collaborate. So for the project to be successful, there is need really to have funders endorsement. And from that guidance, what we target as outcome is to have improved usefulness, transparency, and consistency in NPO financial reports. NPOs being able to demonstrate the capacity in attracting funds and reducing the duplication effort, as we have seen in the previous slides. And the funders will also be able to assess NPOs, because again, they have the same guidance. I'm sure maybe all accountants who are here, if they give you financial statements of maybe bank A and bank B, or maybe private sector entity A and B, it will be easy for you to compare to in the contrast of when it comes to the financial statements of NPOs. The outcome, this guidance also lead to having a simplified audit and assurance provision, and also IFR4NPO, wide community that is working towards addressing these issues in NPOs financial reporting. And as I would say, maybe as an impact, NPOs will be made more efficient, more equitable, and more accountable. Okay, so if now we have this guidance, which is impact, which financial reports will it entail? Of course, when we talk about financial reporting, there are things that are really basic that are already there. So it would encompass the fundamental financial statements like income and expenditure statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. And what will be in addition to that, we also have optional supplementary donor project statement in standard format. So basically you have this I would say essential financial statements, but you also have an option to put supplements when it comes to project reporting, but which is also standardized, which is not like each donor comes and tells you, what you have to report in this format or that format. So by the time the impact is out there, then there will be options for the users or maybe the adopters. So donors will choose either to rely on the statement or the statement in general purpose financial statements, or they will align the new format to impact, or they can even maintain the current practice, which is of requesting projects reports. Okay, let's continue. And there's something I also wanted to mention about this slide is impact is not really there to harmonize the financial reporting guidelines of donors. No, it is just a new guidance that is being developed afresh. It's not like taking the financial report from A to B to C. Of course, even these donors are being consulted in the process, but I also wanted to make that clear. And it will also be looking at the whole organization, the organization reporting, not particularly for just one or two projects. So next slide is about the project objectives. Mainly we have 3 objectives. The first objective is to improve, of course, the quality, transparency, and credibility in NPO financial reports. So the pillars, the key items there is to ensure that there's high quality in financial reporting, there's transparency, and there's also credibility. The second objective is to support the provision of NPO financial information that is useful for decision making and accountability, but at the same time balancing the needs of preparers. So this is to make sure that the guidance is really useful. And the third objective is to address specific NPO issues, which will promote the increased comparability of an NPO financial reports. So the guidance has to ensure that it addresses NPO financial reporting issues, and there is also the comparability. Okay, so we're just going to have a quick poll. We talked about the problems and their effects. We talked about the guidance and the outcome that we want to have. Some has already put it on. So we want, feedback from the participants. Now, the issues and the objectives that we've, put out for the project today resonate with you. Do you agree with them? Do you agree with them, but you have some questions? Do you agree with them to some extent? Do you not agree with them? So we'll just maybe take a minute or maybe maximum 2. Then we'll continue with the presentation. Okay, I'm seeing the responses coming in. Maybe just 30 seconds and we continue. Okay, Sam, so we have about 62 participants, and what should we target? Maybe 70%? Yeah, let's go for 70%. Now we have 61%. So let's keep pushing. Please, everyone, submit your response, because again, this is very important to us.
Oh, sorry, Chris, I've paused. I've shared the results already. I think we got a pattern.
Oh. Yeah, by the way, 61% is good. And I don't want to, to go through the results, because absolutely everyone can be able to see them. So we have close to 70% saying that yes, yes, greatly, the issues and problems and the outcome and how we want to deal with it, greatly resonate with them. And some, they say to some extent, I think participants will be using the chat room maybe to put their views and maybe their input, or maybe what can be incorporated, or maybe anything is just missing out. So thank you very much. I think I will continue with the presentation. I'm sure many people are having some questions, but these are the quick questions that we're going to explain. But should there be any other questions, please put them in the chat room. I think we'll also have time, to go through them and have them responded. So some key questions that we're going to discuss about who is delivering this project, and how is the guidance being developed, and which size of NPO is being intended for. Because again, the NPOs generally they don't fall in the same category. Starting with the first question about who is delivering the project. The project is being delivered in partnership between 2 international organizations, I would say. One is Umentum, another one is CIPFA. Umentum is the leading global nonprofit working with humanitarian and government organization to improve how they operate and make the community more equitable, accountable, and resilient. They convene NPO professionals and inspires sector-wide change. So in the past, if you've ever heard about Mango, the Inside Mango, now they managed to form the Umentum back in 2017. When it comes to CIPFA, the CIPFA in full is a Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy. So it's a standard setter and for local government and charities in the UK. So basically what is happening is that Umentum is also on the side of non-profit organization, funders, but trying to make sure that there's consultation, in the NPO sector. And CIPFA is playing a role of standard setting, and as it has that wide experience. So basically, the motto here is that by sector, for the sector, between the collaboration of these 2. Something also worth mentioning is that for the seed, seed money, seed support to start the project was obtained from Ford Foundation and Open Societies. But as we speak now, other international organizations such as Oak Foundation and World Spring Foundation are the recent donors to support the project. And also something I also want to put up there is that funders don't have an influence on the outcome of the guidance, as the guidance, as we'll be able to see in the subsequent slides, it is being developed by independent professionals across the globe. Okay, about the team now that I've alluded to. So we have different groups, but I'm going to start with a technical advisory group, which I am a member to. I think if you can see at the bottom here in the middle, that is my picture. I think maybe before COVID, as you can see, the face has changed a bit, but maybe God willing, I'll go back to that shape and looking like that. So you can see this is the technical advisory group. So what the TAG group does, it brings a breadth of knowledge and experience, because again, these are the team members who are coming from the standard setters, and actually this works closely with SIPFA. So we have a representative from National Accounting Standard Setters, like myself. I come from IFR, which is a standard setter in Rwanda, but I also represented the whole East African region. We have an official observer coming from the International Accounting Standard Board. Like I said, all the members now represent all the 5 continents, as you can see in the photos. So we also have another group, which is a practitioner advisory group, composed of representatives from NPOs themselves, auditors, academics, donors, regulators. So what this group does mainly is to do what I can call maybe a reality check. So the proposals that are coming from a TAG, technical advisory group, in terms of standards, setting these standards, are they practical? Are they useful? Are they really relevant to the sector to ensure that there's that check and balance? Donor reference group. I think I also mentioned that briefly. For this guidance, to properly work. Of course, there is need for the support of local regulators, standard setters, but also not forgetting the very important role of donors, because donors also have a very important role to play when it comes to adoption. So this donor reference group has put is there to ensure that this guidance that the proposals and guidance that is putting out there is really relevant and is something that donors will be able to embrace. So there are a few of them which are here, including the former DFID, USID, Global Fund, Nippon Foundation, Basically, you can see them on the screen here. So this is to ensure that at least now we are sure by the time the guidance is out there is really something useful and important to the donors. Okay. Engagement up to date. There are currently over 10,000, subscribers from the website, newsletter, and different platforms, particularly on social media. So we have different groups as mentioned, technical advisory group. You have a few, because again, this is a small group representing, the standard setters globally. Practitioners group as well, advisory group. You also see where they're coming from. Country champions in black. Sunday, I think, is somewhere here in East Africa. You can see that East Africa is really doing well when it comes to the representation. We have members from TAG, we have country champion, but there are also people who have already registered to get the news, to get updates from the project. And the 10,000 people, more than 10,000 people we're talking about, they are coming from more than 160 countries. So which means that even if the project is, I would say, maybe at an early to middle stage, it has really taken a good foundation. It has good foundation. So next week, we can look at the stakeholders group. For stakeholders group and 3 categories, they are stakeholders at a national level. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself. Jean-Paul. National level, regional level, international level. So you see that at a national level, we have many stakeholders, and that is really self-explanatory, because again, the guidance will have to be adopted locally. So at a national level, we have government bodies. You remember what even Sandy was mentioning, like here in Rwanda, we have RGB, Professional Accountants Organization, like ourselves, IFR, local auditors, we have them, NPOs, financial preparers, and funders. At continental, regional, the project is also working with regional bodies, mostly with those in accountancy field, like PAFA. PAFA is the Pan-African Federation of Accountants, and then in NPOs also, we know that there are these international NGOs that you find they have international offices, regional offices, continental offices, and such. So internationally, when it comes to the accountancy field, again, we are working closely with other standard setters like International Accounting Standards Board, IPSAS Board, and IFAC in general. Remember, even at the Technical Advisory Group, there is already a representative from ISBA who is looking at, who is, supporting the project and the group to ensure that, the standard setting process is at par with other international standard setters. Internationally, we also have international forum audit firms. Some of you are aware of it, international NGOs headquarters and donor headquarters as well. So another question now is about the timeline and how this process is taking place. So we have 3 phases of delivering this guidance. I would say the first phase has been completed, and that's why you even see that check in orange. It's about the consultation paper. I think there's a good number of participants here who have contributed to the consultation paper. Many thanks. And that was done in January 2021. So currently we are in the phase 2 of developing exposure draft, which will be issued for public comment later this year. And phase 3 now will come up with a final guidance. And I'm sure for those of you who are, conversant with the standard setters, standard setting process, this is the same thing that, this is the same process that is internationally followed. So the final guidance is scheduled to be out there for adoption, maybe early adoption in 2025. As you can see, this is this project is really, really big, and all the stakeholders and groups that are there are really working hard towards making sure that is delivered. So later, which is, you'd say maybe phase 4, maybe as a follow-up, after the guidance is out, issued, and is ready for adoption, there will be some training and transition to be followed from 2025 inward. So in the whole process, what is being considered is technical rigor and stakeholder engagement. And technical rigor is being spearheaded by SIPFA, which is the group of technical groups, and stakeholder engagement is mostly spearheaded by Mentum, that is working together with other donors. Okay. So which issues are being addressed? We remember we talked about the problem tree, but which issues are being really addressed by the project and the impact, the guidance. So the issues are categorized into they are in 2 groups at landscape level and specific topics. At landscape level, we started with, for those of you who have seen the consultation paper, even the exposure draft, I think that will be coming out. We started with, with trying to look at the landscape of NPOs in general. So trying to ask some questions such as like, who are the NPOs? Who are the NPOs? Because again, if you're going to use the standard, you need to know whether you're in the scope of the standards. So after knowing who are the NPOs, what are the users' needs? Now, what are the users of non-profit financial statements? What are their needs? Basically identifying the users of NPO financial reports and their needs, because again, it's their needs that are driving the development of this guidance. And what are the pervasive concepts and principles? When it comes to specific topics, I would say there are some topics which are really specific to NPOs. Of course, when we say specific, we are doing this in contrast of other existing reporting frameworks such as IFRS and IPSAS. So those specific items, specific topics that are relevant to NPOs, you can see them on the screen here. Some of them they include like grant expenses, things to do with fundraising costs, foreign exchange transaction, reporting entity and control. And I think how the guidance is going to address this. Please make sure you watch out for the exposure draft and you see how these ones are being handled. Okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry, let me just try to go back. I think, yeah, I was here. So now, what will the guidance really look like? This is something that has been, extensively discussed with, the groups and stakeholders and, different consultation. And even for those who were able to respond to the consultation paper, they saw this. So how the guidance is going to look like, again, to ensure that there's efficiency, to ensure that the guidance is aligned with other international standards. So what was done is to ensure that we look at the framework that already exists, that is more or less close to the NPO sector. So it was decided that IFRS for SMEs will be used as a foundation framework, but in consideration with other frameworks as well. So if IFRS for SMEs is not, providing something that, can be used as a foundation, then other frameworks such as IFRS, IPSAS, and national standards can be considered. So, so after that, after considering now IFRS for NPO, then we add new sections. You remember we were talking about specific issues for NPOs. So those specific issues that are not there in any framework, then will be added to the guidance, such as non-exchange revenue, grant expenses, reporting entity, fundraising cost, and narrative reporting. Then what will be done after doing that, then we'll take out the sections that are not relevant to NPO, such as distribution. Ideally, we know that NPO, one of the characteristics, we'll be able to see that in the papers to be published. We generally know that NPOs, they don't distribute the profit or the reserves. So after having that, then what will happen? We will have international non-profit accounting guidance. And something to mention also, the ultimate goal is to have this guidance published with the other existing standard setters. It can have like a name such as INPAS, which is International Non-Profit Accounting Standards. Whether that is IFRS Foundation, or then maybe an International Accounting Standards Board, but it becomes one of the internationally recognized guidance. All right, I think this is the last slide, and I will hand over back our person, Sam, to come in. Which NPOs? Remember, we have the 3 specific questions, so this is the last one. Which NPOs now we're trying, to start with to solve most of their issues, maybe all their issues, I would say. So the impact, after due consideration and analysis, maybe before I say where the impact is fitting, we came up with 3 tiers. There's tier 3, which is less complex. Then there's tier 1, which you say is really complex. Tier 1 is about, cash accounting, maybe a local church, a local charity organization, that is really using cash accounting. At the extreme, tier 1, you have now international NGOs, which have maybe their own reporting frameworks, which, are also very complex. And what impact is targeting is to target the middle tier, the NGOs with NPOs, which are really not very complex, but again, which I would say in the medium category. Of course, the ultimate goal is to come up with the guidance that can be used by any NPO without segregation. But that idea is, we have that in mind. And what will happen, of course, when the guidance comes out, it's not to be the end of the road. So it will continuously be improved, and to make sure that even the needs of the high end and the lower end in terms of tiers are also considered. So thank you very much, Sam. I think you can come in and you guide us on how we're going to do the small groups discussion. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris. So let me briefly introduce myself first. My name is Samantha Musoke. I'm from the UK, but I have been in Uganda for 21 years, married to Mr. Musoke, hence I get my lovely name. So I'm the project director for Humentum for this project, and have been since the project launched in 2019. So having had that excellent presentation from Chris, thank you so much, and introduction from Sunday, we thought we'd give you a chance to discuss in some small groups, meet each other, and share some of your reactions and questions and comments in smaller groups before we come together. So we're going to use breakout rooms. Once the rooms are launched, you'll automatically be taken to a new meeting room with 8 to 10 people for about 12 minutes. If you're able to put your video on and your microphone on for that small group chat, it would be really helpful and enable you to have a much more enjoyable and interactive experience. If you do have any questions, there's a button to ask a host a question, and you can summon one of us to your group to help you. When there's 3 minutes left, I'll post a message to remind you. And then when there's 30 minutes, you'll get a countdown, and you'll automatically be brought back into the main meeting with us together. So what should you actually talk about in your rooms? So after some brief introductions, what you should do is share any questions or comments or reactions that have come into your mind while you were listening to Chris and Sunday. Is there anything you'd like clarification about, or something that as a point that needs to be made? And then if you can discuss the benefits, if you can imagine a future where this INPAG guidance exists and is widely adopted, how might that make a difference to NPOs, to regulation, to audit, to donors and grant practice in Rwanda? What might those benefits look like? And also, what challenges can you see and how might they be overcome? Now, when the time is up, you'll automatically brought back, and members of your group will have a chance to share some of those key ideas in the main group. So before I launch those breakout rooms, does anyone have a question? If so, please raise your hand and you can ask it. Or if it's clear,
Sam,
maybe give me a thumbs up.
How long do we have? How long do groups have to discuss?
12 minutes. 12 minutes. So if a few of you could go to reactions and give me a thumbs up if you're clear what you have to do, that will give me some confidence to launch the rooms. And if you turn your video on now, that would be really helpful. Then I can see that you're actually there, you're alive, you're with us, you're a real human being, not just a name behind a screen. And we'll launch those breakout rooms. Great. Oh, another Sam Musoke. Is that coincidence that you have the same name as me? Sam Musoke, I can see. Fabulous. Okay, so I'm going to launch those breakout rooms now. Where's it gone? Breakout rooms. And we'll see you in 12 minutes.
Sam, I'm trying to find out which group I belong to.
I can send you to a group. Let me move you to there. So those of you that are in the this main group, that means maybe you're on phones or let me know if you've got a problem. You can just unmute and say so. I'm just going to pause the recording.
For the standards for NPOs was that if we could try to merge the need for cash reporting according to certain grants, and as well as the grant reporting, because the grant reporting may be difficult because the grant providers have got different requests. Imagine a company with a portfolio of grants, and some of these grants, they are saying some of them you can roll them over, some of them you can't roll them over. So if in a grant where you can't roll over, and then due to the programming challenges, you may not be able to use all the money that you have. So the tendency is to prepay for some of the activities so that you can carry them over while you are waiting for the other funding. Then you can be doing finishing off your program that you have planned. But when you do that, in the reporting issues, under normal circumstances, like according to IFRS, you put that under prepayments. But because you have already used the money and you are doing the cash basis, you are now reporting that the program has been done. But there may not be a report for that program that you would have done because it was prepaid, so that you can prepare your report with those amounts. So, but then if it's a portfolio now, you've got some certain grants that you can pull over. Maybe you are given 3 months grace period in which to exhaust those funds.
Sure.
You can pay them, and you can actually write that these were carried over to the next period. So we were just hoping, we can't have a standard making that maybe, but if the framework could just give guidance into how this thing is done. So yeah, in my introduction, I also told my colleagues that I joined this forum when I was working for an NGO in Zimbabwe. Now I'm corporate, but I remained on the platform so that maybe we could share notes, because I know better.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. That's super. Yeah. So the point that you've brought up there is so important and so common, this issue of accounting basis. And it was a conversation at the TAG and the PAG for a lot of 2020 and 2021, because this challenge that you've mentioned is a very common one. Even if you have the capacity to do accrual accounting, and as we know, accrual information does provide the best, most meaningful. If people could mute themselves, I'd be very grateful. If you're not talking, maybe I'll just. There we go. I've got everybody's muted now. So the conclusion was that after many discussions, and I'm going to put a link in the chat to a tool that we developed to help kind of understand this issue and some guidance for NPOs on this issue. It was also in the consultation paper about the accounting basis. So the guidance itself will be accrual-based guidance. like all other international standards. We want to bring nonprofits to the same sort of professional footing as other sectors, and accrual accounting is the best for doing that at entity level. Now, in the conversations with donors, we've had, there was also a report from the donor reference group. I'll also link that report in the chat, where we've been talking about why do donors want cash basis reports? And sometimes there are very good reasons for that, especially if it's about getting cash remittances. So you can only get the next tranche of cash when you show that you've spent the last tranche of cash. And there's some of it is about their perception of capacity of grantees. Sometimes it's the real capacity of grantees, and sometimes it's about trust and fear of fraud when there's wiggle room in that accrual accounting space. And sometimes it's about cash flow. Sometimes it's about the requirements of their back donors or their governments. So USAID, for example, in certain circumstances, they have to require cash accounting of their grantees because it's a requirement of the government in some circumstances. So it's not always freedom of the donors to decide what they want. And many NPOs struggle with this. We want to do our annual accounts and our board accounts and our big picture financial sustainability and financial position. We need accrual accounting to know our liabilities, to know our debts, to know our prepayments and our advances. And yet for donors, they want it on a cash. So what this tool does, this link here, it's a tool that really helps you look at it from a negotiation standpoint with your donors, depending on the power balance between you and your donors. What could you negotiate for in terms of being able to do accrual versus a cash accounting? And we're also advocating with donors to allow more flexibility and less prescription on accounting basis. We've had, as I say, very interesting conversations with that. I wish there was a nice, easy, done, dusted, tick that box answer to your amazing question, Lawrence. There isn't, because it's too sort of profound and fundamental. But just to know that you're absolutely right. This is something we've really been talking about and thinking about. So I'll put the link to the donor reference group report there as well, so you can see progress on that. So I think my answer is watch this space. I hear you 100%, and we're trying to find solutions, but there's no obvious one. Great. Are there any other hands up? Who else would like to? I saw another hand up earlier. Who else would like to make a comment? You can use go to reactions and raise your hand like that. Then we can see that you'd like to share something. It could be a question, a comment, a reaction, a thought. Is this too slow? Is it too soon? Is it too early? Have you been wanting this for a long time? I'm just going to see if I can mute some people that are making noise in the background.
Manish, I thought it would be a good idea to share your experience like we had discussed in the backup rooms.
He can unmute himself and come in.
Yeah, hi Sunday, hi Sam, and hi Chris. Yeah, it's been long. I have not worked on development sector, but in the initial years, we used to work with most of the international donor agencies, and there's always a challenge of cash-based accounting and the different reportings which they want. So it's sometimes what Lawrence explained. It's quite difficult to for accounting and reporting purpose, and also it becomes difficult for auditors when they certify the accounts, and which has a great importance for the donors, because it is always in that industry that certain donors, they prefer certain accountants, like it become a brand or credentials. So we were one of the leading auditors for that major, so it becomes also important for us to make sure that what we are doing is correct, and to also make sure what the donors, the programs, or the policies are followed. So that's always been a challenge. So I think it's a very good step that if that can be harmonized or standardized, so that it's easier for all the stakeholders to be on the same page.
Right, that's great. That's great, Manish. I think we still have a few minutes. Can we also share some other experiences from maybe from the ladies?
Mel has also put his hand up.
Oh, Mel, do you want to come in? Do you want to, if you put your camera on, then we can pin you as well. While you're doing that, let me just respond to Lawrence added an extra question. What happens if the donor disagrees? Do you just divert from the standards? So this comes back to what Chris talked about earlier. There's your general purpose entity-wide accounts for the entity, which is different from your grant reports for a specific donor or a specific grant. And yes, it might be that you do your entity accounts on an accrual basis and you do your grant accounts on a cash basis. Many NGOs do that right now. It takes time and effort and it's resource intensive and inefficient, but that is the reality at the moment. So if your donor doesn't let you do accrual, then you have to have different things for different donors. Anyway, Mel, do you want to come in?
Hi guys, please, I just have a question. Where can we find the requirement of the donors? That is my question. Thank you.
Where can you find the requirements of donors? Well, each donor often has its own requirements, and this is part of the challenge, that because there hasn't been an international standard that they can all line up behind that's relevant for the sector, they've each developed their own guidance to standards. So if you have a grant from USAID, they will send you their regulations. If you have a grant from ECHO, they will send you their regulations. You can often find them on the websites of each donor as well. But there's no one place that's the home of all donor regulations, unfortunately. Not that I'm aware of. Unless somebody else knows about this, they could share it with us. As far as I know, there isn't. That's part of the challenge.
Brenda, do you want to share something?
Hi, Samantha. I'm sorry, I've been looking for the hand to raise, but I was not getting it.
So I spotted you there.
Okay. For me, it's about the time. I don't know whether the time we've planned, it will be sufficient. Because there seem to be a lot still that has to happen. Considering the large number of donors that we have, the time for rolling out, the time for training, donor buy-in, and probably even the different governments that may be involved, because these are reports that will be used by also beyond the donors. So I'm just wondering about whether the time that we've set is sufficient. It's what is going through my mind anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Samantha, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Sunday. Yes. It's a great question. And again, I think it will vary by country. So the time that we have to deliver the guidance is 2025. It's tight, but I do think it's enough. You'll see there's a slide that Sunday is going to present shortly after we've done our small group feedback, which shows the timetable for the exposure drafts and the feedback. And it will be enough to produce the guidance, but then after that, it's up to each country to decide when to adopt it, how to adopt it, the transition, the training, which NPOs it should be applicable to, etc. And as we know from other standards, that can take time. So, for example, IPSAS was issued in 1997. There's only 19 countries that are adopting it, but 72 are in progress. So hopefully this won't be quite as big a deal as IPSAS and IFRS, because it should be a smaller standard, but it's up to each country to decide when to adopt it and how the timing of that works. So our goal is that some countries will have adopted by 2030. Those might be among the earliest that we see. It is a long game. 2025 to issue it, and then a few more years to see the first implementation of it. I hope that answers the question, but it's a good point. We were under pressure to do it in less time, and we said we really can't do it in less than that if we want to get consensus and opinions and move together.
Thank you.
I think Daniel has put it.
Yeah, there's a question here by Daniel. Yes, Chris?
Yeah, that's the question that I'd also spotted. He had put his hand up, but we can take it from the chat room.
Yeah, but you see, the question that Daniel is asking is the reason as to why we are actually developing this guidance, because different stakeholders have different needs. If the donor requires a report, then the other stakeholders need a different report. So we need one uniform guidance to sort out the issues from all the stakeholders. So she's asking, same question even from our team, different donors have their own reporting frameworks that apply to NPOs, and one NPO most of the time runs many projects from different donors. How will the IFR4NPO harmonize that diversity? And which assurance that donors will agree to deviate their own requirements and allow NPOs to adopt the guidance basically developed by this initiative? I think this is why actually we are engaging all the stakeholders to get on board, such that by the time we have the guidance, there is buy-in. They feel that they contributed to this. Maybe some can also add to that to see how we can address this. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is again really crucial. There's a slide that Chris showed earlier. I don't know if you saw it, but it had the general purpose financial statements with the three main, the balance sheet, the income, expenditure, and the cash flow, plus this optional supplementary statement. Now, this project has no jurisdiction or authority to require donors to do anything other than what they want to do. We don't. Likewise, we have no authority to require countries to adopt this standard. It's all by consensus. Now, with that optional supplementary statement that's going to be as part of the impact guidance, we are consulting with donors as we develop that. So we hope that there will be a degree of, yes, that's a good format, that's useful, and we've had input to it. But it's up to each donor whether they would say, okay, let's say a donor says, right, in terms of financial assurance on this project, we're going to rely purely on the general purpose financial statements and the statement that we can see in that relates to our funds. We're not going to ask for an additional audit. We're not going to ask for an additional report in a different format. They could choose to do that if they want to. Alternatively, they could choose to say, we still want our separate audit and we still want our separate financial report for our grant, but we are going to choose to use the same format as in the impact standard, so that over time we can get more convergence and alignment. They could also choose to say, no, we want our own format and we want our own audit. That's their prerogative, right? And that's part of the advocacy over time to try and engage more auditors. But at the moment, there's nothing for auditors, for donors that want to harmonize, there's nothing for them to line up behind. What this does is it provides a sort of focal point, a magnet that donors that are interested in aligning and that can see the benefits of that for their grantees, they can participate and engage in developing that, and they can line up behind it as they choose to. So we cannot guarantee, and I don't want to oversell or overpromise what this project can do. We cannot speak for donors, but we're giving something that they can line up behind, which over time, we really do believe will lead to more harmonization. Hope that answers your question.
All right, that answers it absolutely, and hopefully that discussion has made everyone keen to participate and engage with the public consultations as they are conducted during the development process. So what is the roadmap for our future consultations? It's good to know the overall project plan. So as in Rwanda, we can get to know where we're heading. Like that question, for example, most stakeholders would still need to know, yes, are we going to adopt this guidance? If we adopt, who is going to be the main stakeholders who are going to be overseeing this? So the analysis of the consultation paper responses were presented on, was it 2nd Feb? And there is a summary on the website as well. The website has been shared by Sam on this chat. So the analysis from the consultation paper responses will form the basis for developing the draft guidance itself. So this will be done in 3 tranches of work, each culminating into a release of an exposure draft. I think already Chris has alluded to this. The guidance is following the same process like other international standards. The same way they develop the international financial reporting standards, the same way they develop the international public sector accounting standards, in the same way, the same approach we're using to develop this guidance. So after the exposure draft, there will be a 4-month consultation period, during which there will be webinars and regional consultation meetings. So individuals and organizations will be all welcome and invited to submit their responses as they come in. So you can either respond online following the website that you've already shown, or engage us at the Institute, either me or Chris, who can always support you. So the feedback from the exposure drafts will then inform the changes to make the final impact guidance, which we hope to launch in 2025. So it is that process. You start from the consultation, the feedback you get, it comes as the output, then it contributes as the input to the exposure draft, and the input, the feedback we get from the exposure draft will also provide further insights on how the final guidance, which we are calling the impact, would be come 2025. So the end goal, firstly, we want to make sure that the international guidance doesn't just get written without the expertise of professions from Rwanda. And this is why we are engaging you today, so that you can give us your experiences, your insights. How do you feel about the guidance? Such that by the time we have it out there, you feel like your voices were already heard too. The perspectives in Rwanda and Rwandan stakeholders have been incorporated. Secondly, we also hope that Rwanda will also adopt the guidance. This is why we need to get close to the stakeholders who are the ones in charge. For example, as the Institute, we know that when we adopt these international standards, the Institute takes the lead. But when it comes to implementation, it's important that we work with the relevant authorities. For example, in this case, we need to work with the platform itself. We need to work with the Rwanda Revenue Authority. We need to work with the Rwanda Governance Board, the same way we work with the Capital Market Authority, with the National Bank of Rwanda, when we want the entities to comply with the IFRSs. So in order to have a voice, we need to be aware of the proposals being made and the questions that are being asked. So we should be visiting the website. It has already been shown to you. You need to subscribe to it, send emails, and attend webinars like you've attended. We are going to continue inviting you to attend even other webinars that are going to be hosted by other country champions elsewhere, not necessarily in Rwanda, but even in other countries, just for you to have that feel to continue the engagements. Okay, you share your opinions. Some people will be invited to regional consultation events, and we, of course, we hope that you can also have some focus group discussions, and all of those are going to be free of charge. You need to just submit your written responses to the questions in the EDs that shall be shared. Then who is going to be involved? Any of you here is welcome to get involved. Individuals from any relevant stakeholders are welcome, as well as consultants or trainers. In any category that you're coming from, please feel free to get engaged and engage with us. The project is particularly keen to receive responses from organizations. Okay? If you're interested in coordinating a response from your organization, you can register as an organization champion, and the project will be able to provide some guidance for you in that role. So if you are really ready to volunteer, take this forward, please also engage us. We're also keen to establish a small working group with the interested parties from across the sector that can discuss and debate on the question from a Rwanda wider perspective. Again, if you really feel you want to be that group, you can still engage us and see how we can move forward. So the useful links, we have a couple of them. Some of them have already been shared. We have the website, which is already shared with you. We want also to take this opportunity to take away from we want to hear from you. What have you taken away from this whole meeting? So we have an opportunity of a generation to shape the future. So please, and we kindly request you to please engage with the project and share your voice during the consultation processes. Like, for example, the issue of the Shimwe, if you didn't engage us, sometimes by the time we have the guidance, you feel you are not part of it. You feel like you are not able to resonate or take it up. But now that, you know, we have had the discussions around its development process, I think this is part of the input that we need from the rest of the other stakeholders. So we have a few more minutes, like 10 minutes. So if you have any questions or comments that you would love us to discuss, please, let's use those minutes for those discussions before I say a final goodbye to you. 1 or 2 questions, and then we see how to proceed. The floor is over to you now for any question that you might have. Okay. Anybody, you can even use the chats. Yes.
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm Brenda.
Yes, Brenda.
Yes, I work for Crystal Connect. It's a foundation for Crystal Ventures. It's my first time to be part of this this initiative, and I'm really happy to be part of it. It's just an appreciation, and I would love to keep contributing to this. Thank you so much, and nice meeting everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. That's really very nice to hear. And I think in this, one of the things we've tried to do is to tap into the wider network as much as we can. And I wish that we can get more stakeholders such as yourselves on this platform, such that by the time we have the guidance, and believe me, in Rwanda, it's even going to be more serious, because I alluded to it in my introduction. I talked about the anti-money laundering law and countering terrorism financing, or the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. NGOs come up there because they believe that, yes, even these guys, sometimes they masquerade as NGOs or NPOs, but behind them, there are some big, they call them smart puppets behind, who are the owners of such organizations. Now we have the AML law, which requires all NPOs to have reporting persons to be supporting any incidents of money laundering. And when you look at the sanction regime, the sanctions are quite enormous, they are big. And sometimes ignorance is not defense. So we are thinking, if these guys, yes, they don't have a proper guidance on how they can be guided to get information from the people they deal with, these people are going to be sanctioned. So to us, it's high time that we work together with all the relevant stakeholders. We have this guidance, even if it's a financial reporting guidance, but it's going to facilitate these NPOs to prepare to get information, adequate information, timely and accurate information, such that by the time they are reporting to the relevant authorities, let it be the Financial Intelligence Center, let it be the RGB, at least they have a guidance which helps them to get adequate and timely information. And we believe working with them would really add to that. So thank you for that, Brenda, and we're looking forward to working with you. Maury? Yes? You have something to say? Ombati?
No,
anyway,
no, I don't have.
You don't have. Anyway, yes. If there are no more questions, I believe we've shared, we'll share the presentation, make sure that at least we get everything. But what is important is for you to continue with engagements. And we've shown already, indicated how you are going to participate, how you can remain engaged so that your voice continues to be heard, especially in Rwanda. If there are specific issues of NPOs that you believe they should be part of those guidance, or the international standards, when you are producing IFRSs, for example, and you believe that, yes, in Rwanda we have museums, we have natural resources, but we don't have a standard to address those issues. So this would be the right time for us to engage and make sure that in a specific thing that resonates to Rwanda, that might not be an issue in another country, let's get it known such that it is incorporated. So we are looking forward to engaging you further and keeping with you. The website have already been shared. So thank you so much for participating. And thank you for the presenters, Sam, Chris. God bless you. Thank you for now. Enjoy the rest of the day.
What about that picture, Sam? So.
Thank you.